computer instead of in my headphones, and I was like, man.
All right, technical issues have been solved. The intro countdown is going, and we are now live. We are here with Ryan Robicheaux. Did I say that right?
Yeah, you got it, Robicheaux. Yep.
Hell yeah. I mean, I feel like I could get that one. And we're going to be here talking a little bit about Kiowas, particularly about Ryan's brand new book that just released about 2.5 weeks ago, Scouts Out, which is a memoir of his experiences as a scout helicopter pilot in Afghanistan, both in the Bagram area and also in 2013 in Kandahar, which is obviously why he is on the Panjwai Podcast. So, Ryan, thanks for joining us. It's a privilege to have you on here. It's been a little long time coming, so I'm glad we're finally able to get it going.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad you got a chance to come on and chat. So I guess the first question is, did you flew over Panjwai, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you can tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, so basically the whole operation, the whole security zone, that was kind of known as being where we're going to operate a lot, I would say. So I do remember on my first, couple flights out there, ripping out with the previous dudes, and they were just like, hey, that over there, that's Spurwingar. Like, you're going to get familiar with that mound over there.
It's a very notable terrain feature.
Yeah, and I was like, that's like a fake mountain compared to the other mountains. Okay, I can't really miss that.
Yeah. more like a mound.
Yeah. Just a big anthill with maybe like a tank on top. I do remember there was an artillery piece or a tank or something up there one day. I was like, oh, okay. But yeah.
Yeah, I think they when you were there, they had this thing called the MGS, which was it's basically a main gun mounted on top of a striker, and the freaking striker and armor dudes are like in love with that thing. Yeah. They had it parked up there. They thought it was going to change the war, and I'm pretty sure they fired it about a handful of times. It wasn't very good. But,
I don't remember ever seeing it go off.
It's a line of sight weapon. Right. Why would they use that when they have you?
Right.
So. Before we get too far down the rabbit hole, we wanted to cover a couple housekeeping items. If you're paying attention to the Scouts Out social media page or the Panjwai Podcast website or social media page, you'll notice we're running a brand new promotion in conjunction with Scouts Out to get some books sold. So starting today, if you go to the link in the bio or in the description or the link in our bio on Instagram or on the website, you go to the Scouts Out official website and their publishing house. You can order a signed hard copy of Scouts Out, and it's going to come with the sweet brand new Kandahar spring break koozie that we're just launching. Oh, I got mine over here as well. The Scouts Out hard copy signed spring break Kandahar koozie, custom sticker that we designed just for Ryan and his book. And you can get the information on all those on the website and social media. If you use the code PanjwaiPod, when you place that order, you get 5% off, and you'll get all those sweet goodies. So go ahead and hop on that and get that. It basically is like getting an $8 book when you factor in the cost of the koozies and the stickers and all that kind of fun stuff. So there's absolutely no reason not to do it. Buy a koozie, get an $8 book. So we're going to be running that throughout here in conjunction with that. Also, if you really like the koozie, and you want another one in addition to the one you bought with the book, we do have some blue koozies with the same design available for our website right now for $10. So that being said, Ryan, we usually start these things by asking a little bit of background about you. Hey, by the way, nice shirt, Luke.
Oh yeah. Coming out for the cause today. Yeah,
but I would not have worn it. Oh, damn it.
Now we're twinning
a little too hard.
Yeah.
So sorry, I got sidetracked there. The way we always start these things is we ask our guests to talk to us a little bit about themselves, why they chose to join the Army, how you ended up becoming a Kiowa pilot. Obviously, you go into this in quite a bit of, well, not not a whole lot of detail, but you tell that story in the book, so you don't need to go too far over the edge. Just kind of give us like the short elevator pitch of, of you and how you came to be here.
Cool, absolutely. Well, first of all, that koozie is rad. Like, I'm super excited just to have one myself. It's really cool. But anyhow, I grew up in Hot Springs, Arkansas. My father had originally been he'd been a Marine Corps A6 intruder pilot. My brother had been in the infantry and all that. So, I was kind of called to do it. I really grew up around, military stuff and run around the woods with sticks like they're guns, and just kind of always wanted to do it. But it was really, 9/11. I was a high school senior, watching all that go down. I was, man, I'm going to have to go active duty. Like, I have to. So when I was in college, joined up in the Guard, became a medic, finished out my college time while my brother was over there, kind of reporting back what's going on. And I'd read, news to him and all that, because he was in Baghdad in early, 2004. So they didn't really have good intel gathering. So I'd get a call from an Iraqi cell phone. I'd like run to the student center, get on the computer, try and tell them stuff. So I was in the Guard at that point, but then I need to continue this. Like, I need to actually, be doing this more than just on the weekends. So whenever I learned more about the Warrant Officer Flight Program, it just sounded great. I went through that. The interview process was pretty crazy. There was a lot of people trying to go through at that time. It was a very saturated environment, but they tried to make me a lieutenant. I was not okay with that. Luckily I fought back on that one. So yeah, I ended up in 317 Cav, went over to Savannah, and we deployed maybe a year. I don't even think I was in Savannah a year before I deployed. So kind of all the train ups was still just getting my feet wet with the bird after flight school, being at Fort Rucker close to 2 years. They had the big bubble. And when I showed up in country, I mean, I was pretty green. I did not have much flight time in that thing. And they're just like, you're going to have to learn quick. So
what year was this?
There we launched. That was late 2009. So
okay.
Yeah, it was late. It was that full, year deployment time frame. So it was, 2009 to pretty late in 2010. I think I got home like a couple of days before Thanksgiving in 2010. So.
Okay. So the ass end of your Iraq deployment overlapped with the front end of mine.
Yeah.
So
that was Afghanistan, not Iraq. I never went to Iraq. Yeah. My brother had ended up in Iraq, but yeah, I was out of Bagram at that time. We had made we'd made a Fox troop, which hadn't stood up since like Vietnam. But they needed a contingent of Kiowas and Apaches on Bagram for all the activity around there in that Bagram Bowl. So they kind of farmed from all the different units across 317 and 1-3 attack for the Apaches, and we kind of functioned. It was interesting because we were a very small contingent as part of a combat aviation brigade on the south side of the field, and run by a Black Hawk unit who just didn't know what to do with us. So it was.
That's funny. I was run by a Black Hawk unit when I was in Kandahar. It was a nightmare.
Yeah. I just did not quite understand what we were really all about. I mean, that's what it felt like anyway, and it was kind of evidenced as we went along. I was like, well, surely this will get better. Like we'll mesh. And like 11 months later, I'm like, holy shit! Like.
So was the things pretty spicy during that deployment for you?
It was really weird. I would say it had ups and downs, truthfully. We had periods where we're just flying around the bowl and, enemies hibernating. There just would not be much. And then you get down into the Tagab Valley, which was to the east, this nice little, long valley under French control. And down in there, it could get dicey in a hurry. And it was beautiful scenic flying. You could just get caught in the moment, like, wow, snow-covered mountains. It's really beautiful. Holy shit, the French are under attack. It's just like,
right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you get back from that deployment, then you start gearing up. How many deployments did you have in total?
I just had 2. I had that first one. We were home roughly 2 years, and then we ended up back in, going back over to Kandahar. So that was in late 2012, well into 2013. It was like 9, I don't know, plus or minus 2 weeks or so, 9 months.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Like, I remember this very distinctly when we were in Manus, and we were finally on our way to hop on our plane out of Manus to head home, and we're walking down this sidewalk out of the tents towards the flight line, and it's just this fucking huge line of third ID officers, pilots, and warrant officers, and I just walked like this for like 2 minutes straight because that's all it was. Because you guys were, I think we pretty much flew. We probably flew out on the plane that you guys flew into Manus.
Right.
So I think we that was probably our first
literally
interaction.
past each other. Yeah.
Probably literally past each other.
Yeah.
This would have been early December 2012.
It was so cold, dude. It was cold.
Awesome. God,
We
were relishing in it.
Yeah, it's like I think I wrote that in the book. I was like, it's like an Arctic expedition site, like where our tents were. It's just this, like freezing snow everywhere.
Yeah. Well, on our way out, they let us do like the whole 2 beers thing. Which, obviously we got like the 9.5%, Baltic number 9. And like, so that was enough to get a couple of dudes going. And like, we were like walking around a tent and I see these dudes are like throwing trash cans at each other. And they're like trying to like see how far they can slide on the ice. I'm like, oh my God, someone is going to die in Manus.
Third ID was so ridiculous. Like, they're just, thou shall not have any booze until you're back in Savannah. Like, just never. They never released
third ID.
Oh, well then, yeah. I guess our part of third ID.
Yeah. I think because we had such a rough go at it, they took and because it was a battalion size deployment, so I think that played into it too.
Yeah.
So it was the battalion commander had the authority to make that decision. Didn't have to go any higher than that. Maybe it's one of the only things he actually did for us.
Yeah. So talk us through after Curtis very sarcastically saluted you in line on your way from the C-17. Talk us through, how you ended up in Kandahar and Panjwai.
Yeah. So after that, kind of migrated over there. Pretty much from the time we hit Kandahar, I was like, this is going to be definitely a different deployment than Bagram was. Bagram, we had a lot more, I'd say more freedom to maneuver, again, because of the aforementioned, they didn't really know what to do with us. So we could kind of tell them like, hey, if there's no deliberate missions today, we're going to go out and look for work. And there was kind of a standing thing. You're going to fly 2 bags of gas, which was essentially, 4.5 hours or so within a 12-hour period, but we're running QRF. So, always quick reaction force or deliberate missions. It was a lot more of that. And Panjwai was really weird. The ROE, I think, had gotten very strict. The risk aversion had gotten very strict. And we actually had, I believe, just way too many pilots on our list. There's a lot of staff aviators that we had to have flying with us as well. So, we had a lot of junior pilots that we were trying to get up and trying to get them seasoned. And it was just incredibly difficult because we just had so many more dudes. On that.
And I want to take a second and explain what you just said, because to a lot of people that aren't aviation, it might go past them. The whole staff aviator thing. The aviation companies, just like an infantry company and everything else, you have like your normal guys, like your infantrymen, your team leaders, your sergeants, your platoon sergeants, everything like that. Aviation company's not all that different. It's just a lot smaller. It's mostly warrant officers. But what you have is, because everyone at the battalion level, like your S3 officers, S2 officers, most of those are also pilots, but they're not in a company. They still have to fly. They have to meet minimums. Like, they're still rated aviators. So what ends up happening is the companies have to support them flying. So whereas they're not actually in like a maneuver company, they still it's kind of like guest appearances. They'll like come in and be like, hey, I'm here to make sure I meet my minimums and say I actually did something on this deployment. And so they come in, and like you said, if you're a junior guy and you have way too many pilots and there's only so many shifts that the maintenance can support, these guys coming in, like if there's 20 of them trying to maintain their minimums, like, you're like, dude, my job is to fly and you're taking all my shit.
Yeah.
Because there's 20 or 30 of them.
I can imagine that being incredibly frustrating.
Super frustrating, especially because they suck. Sorry, guys. But when you're a staff pilot and you only fly once a week, you fucking suck. You're like, there's some really good ones, or some really good ones that might have just come off the line or are just certified badasses, which they do exist, but like for the most part, when they're just out there, they're basically just like tourists, and it's kind of annoying.
Yeah,
So
I could see that.
I remember. Yeah, I remember. The infamous the risk assessment worksheet before we'd fly, and it just got more and more complex during my time in the Army. So basically, maybe it didn't change, and maybe I just imagine it did because maybe I just got so sick of it. But I mean, it just had so many blocks before you could go fly. It was like a lawyer was just hanging out with you all day before you flew, and you got to go see this guy, and did you check this, and oh, how's the weather, and do you have a staff aviator with you? Oh, how experienced is he? Well, that's going to be a higher number of risk. So it just, this thing would just continually be after you. I don't know where I'm going with that. Just staff aviators got me like thinking about that. I was like, man, that risk assessment worksheet, God.
Yeah. Well, and that's another aspect of the whole aviation deployment that everything we do is very meticulously at least thought of. I won't say it's meticulously planned because that's just not true.
No.
But before an aircraft comes off the ground, you have the crew brief. You have to make sure that you do your risk assessment. You're even if you're in Afghanistan, you're still filing a flight plan. It's not a real thing, but you're still doing it because it's just part of your routine.
Yep.
Or a flight strip, or however they did it then.
Right.
It's not like and that kind of stuff was happening behind the scenes for us in the infantry. The platoon leader was filling out like a trip roll up of the number of people that were going on the mission. He was submitting a risk assessment for every mission. It was just one guy doing it for all 40 of us. Right. Whereas when you're flying, every single person is participating in that process, and there's a lot of visibility on it.
And you got to chase people down because the riskier it is, right, then you got to get these higher level signatures. So, I mean, and it was when it became super detrimental to my mind is when there really honestly is a lot going on. Like, you guys are out on some big ass op, like we're trying to rotate, we got things going on, but sure. Then, Joe just got sick. Well, shit. Well, now we need to actually go back. We can't just throw him in the seat and go. We got to go find maybe a new signature authority to put Joe in his seat. So I felt like in Kandahar, there was more than that. And again, I could be my recollection, but I don't think it was. I just don't recall us having that level of ass pain in the first deployment as we did in the second deployment.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that could also relate to where you guys lived in relation to where you worked, right? Because the Kandahar flight line is on the complete other side of the airfield from where you guys lived.
Right.
Now, when I was in Kandahar, it was different. We were on the airfield essentially, so it wasn't as big a deal to go find that battalion commander for a medium, moderate risk mission, or to find the company commander because he was always there. It was either he was at his B's or he was there, and the battalion was right there. And if you did have to wake somebody up, you could just walk across the street and grab them.
Yeah.
That definitely was not the case for you guys, right? Because you live. Right. Where did you guys live?
We were in the little ROBs, like even way away from the poo pond. Like, we were so far. The little chews or whatever. So it was a pretty good drive, and we had a busted up series of couple little vans that we'd have to like rotate pilots out to keep any kind of transportation because it was just on us.
Right.
Yeah. So we had this just like busted van trying to get everybody to the flight line.
But you kept all your gear at the flight line, right?
Yeah, so we had like a little shack out there, across that nice big field of ankle snapping rocks where all the Apaches and everybody was parked. But yeah, ours was way on the backside. So at least your gear was out there. It was just, it could become kind of a chore. You really had to plan, like, okay, if I have to launch at whatever 8 a.m. or whatever it may be, like, you got to really sort out how you're going to get there, make the briefings, make all this stuff, and that was definitely a challenge, I would say.
And you guys weren't even allowed to be on the real airfield. They had you like stuck on what they called Mustang ramp, which was like this like mini base just north of the airfield. Because I'm assuming the Air Force was like, helicopters will not.
Yeah,
on our
they could. Nah, they could land in the rocks over there. They're fine. Yeah.
Well, despite the invigorating details of Army aviation risk mitigation, let's
look. It's an important part to understand. The second part of Ryan's book, where he felt a lot of those things were actually getting in the way of helping people.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I was trying to go with it.
Yeah.
It's just, it was the whole Panjwai fight. I had heard these things before going there. I distinctly remember, the calls before we went in, and they're just like, I'll never forget the quote. It's just, it's fucking game time out here, boys. I'm like, okay, it's game time. It's going to be game time. But then when we went, I was like, there's so many problems for us to go through before we can get to game time. So I think that's why I was trying to cover some of that, because they were legitimate hurdles before we could really get out there and try to mix it up.
Yeah.
So when you guys got boots on the ground and after you got your paperwork lined up or whatever, like when did you start flying, and like what do they call it? Aviation AOR?
Yeah. So you go out, and as our instructor pilots would link up with their guys, get the local area orientation, as we call the LAO, done, and you start passing it on for everybody in the troop. So you start mixing in crews with the dudes leaving. So it was pretty quick after we got there. We had the same dance of all the classes and things to get you up to speed on the area. But after that, it was okay. We're moving at a clip here, and it's a huge AO. I mean, there was a lot to learn. I definitely remember there was a lot more to that map to try and memorize and learn your way around. And that was another part that was difficult for us, having not the recency of experience, because, I was not flying near as much as I had been in the previous AO. So it was a little harder to like put together on a map, like this route, this COP, this FOB is here, because I wasn't seeing it as often. And that was kind of its own, difficulty sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, I could imagine. Yeah, they just kind of getting dropped in, especially when you're going in with this game time preparation. So
yeah.
How soon after you got there did shit start getting real? I mean, was it pretty quick?
Yeah, it was still, I would say it was still ongoing. I mean, we just kind of high-fived right in. It was my first or second flight, honestly, like, oh, okay. Here we got something going on down here. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, it was certainly right in the beginning. I got in a nice high-speed motorcycle chase, with the dudes had just been lighting some people up near Spurwingar. I tried to knock them off their bike with a smoke grenade, and we were chasing them around. And, later on in the same mission, I was like, that's not right over there. Kind of the patterns of life were starting to come back. Yep, that dude, I think he's emplacing an IED. And, later on, Pred kills dude with, Hellfire. Like, hooray, I found him. So it was pretty quick after we got in there. I was like, oh, okay. It is game time when we can actually get out here. It's just when we are actually ourselves authorized to engage was the problem.
Right. I mean, do you think that a part of that, I mean, this might be detailed out in your book. Sorry, I didn't read it. Sorry, bro.
No worries.
But is it, do you think that that's because of the nature of the assemblage of your unit? Because with all these officers and everything, or was it just the woes at the time? I mean, this was a time, even over the course of our deployment, except for when Abrams came in for a little bit, it was like we could feel that ROE getting really tight, even though we were still getting in the shit out there every day.
Yeah, I would imagine that really any unit that was there at that time, because it was just coming from a higher level. It just, even in the 9 months that I was there, there were definitely FOBs that were once there and no longer were. They were just becoming bulldozed dust pits. Yeah. And I think that was actually, if I remember correctly, down in like the further southwest corner of the Horn, I remember a couple had shut down. So that tightening of the ROE, and later on, not to go too far into the book, because I kind of talk about that, but basically as the deployment goes on, you can kind of see those restrictions start to tighten the noose around us to that just almost inept point where we it didn't matter who a super army you were. You're just kind of like, what are we doing now? I want to go help these guys. I want to do what I'm trained to do. And a lot of guys had lots of previous deployments, and hey, we got something going on over here, but sorry, can't respond.
So, I mean, I definitely don't want to spoil anything for your book, but do you
Yeah.
have a couple of memories, that really stick out, and specifically in regard to Panjwai or Spurwingar?
I remember definitely down near Spurwingar. We were flying around out there. We've been out there for a little while, and we were hearing about a tick on the ground. So of course, troops in contact, you kind of drop everything, go for the tick, go just see what's up. I was actually functioning on a pink team at that time. So I had an Apache, which is just the enemy's worst nightmare. I absolutely love pink teams.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we're like, well, we plan to go down here and mix it up a little bit more. At least we're just going to start getting shot at and figure out where this is coming from. Like, that's our plan. So we go down, we start juking around. Sure enough, I start hearing the taps. I start hearing some fire. Yep, they're down here. Ground guys are in comms with us. They have an idea roughly where it's coming from. So we just started zigzagging around the area trying to isolate this. And we finally were trying to talk the Apache onto this compound. And because all the culottes look roughly similar, I imagine from the ground, it's just absolutely horrible. But we were trying to talk the Apache on, trying to talk him on. So finally I was like, I'm just going to drop a smoke grenade right in the courtyard. He's like, but that means you're going to fly over the courtyard. I was like, yeah, I don't know what else to do. So we're just like hauling ass in there. And sure enough, we got so good at throwing smokes, luckily. And, we had no doors on. So I just kind of leaned out and just hucked this smoke grenade. And it was like one of the best throws I've ever done. And it landed right in the middle of this courtyard. And the fire stops, yellow smoke's billowing out of this courtyard. And ground guys are like, oh, well, I guess that's that. Because now the Apache's up there just like, ooh, yeah, what's in here? And I think they figured out real quick, like, oh, yeah, we're going to have to disappear now, which they were insanely good at. I mean, I got to give them credit. They could melt back into the population like that,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we on the ground, we rarely saw them. I mean, you were lucky to catch muzzle blast from where they laid a PKM on a wall or something.
Yeah.
That's interesting, and that speaks to what the Army's missing out on by retiring the Kiowa, man. You can't chuck smoke grenades out the door of a fucking Apache. I guess you could, but it might not be a great idea.
I've seen it done, but it's a little bit of a process.
You sure as hell can't chuck water and dip and MREs and
that was one of my favorite things. Yeah, that was probably. I mean, going back to flight school, it was the whole mantra of don't get the shiny airframe syndrome. Pick the mission.
Yes.
It doesn't really matter what you want to fly, honestly. It's what do you want to do? And just talking to my brother and I'll admit fully, like going into flight school, I didn't know crap about the Kiowa. It was actually at Fort Rucker that I really even started to learn about what it was all about, having some chats over the phone, with people who had been supported by them before. I was like, holy crap, like this thing. I mean, I've even been in the Army for several years and I don't know shit about this aircraft. And that's when it dawned on me. I was like, this thing is only known to those who are directly supported by one, like usually in combat roles, because there's so many people that I know that are retired Army. And they'll be like, what'd you do? Like, I flew the Kiowa. What the hell's that?
Yeah.
Obviously, we had a different time.
Yeah.
I mean, that's.
So you're saying you didn't pick it because it was the only aircraft that didn't require you to have to complete.
Yeah,
I can hear you. Yeah, we got you.
Oh, that was me.
Yeah, plug yourself. So I'm saying you didn't pick the Kiowa because it was the only aircraft that didn't require you to learn how to fly a second aircraft?
No.
And for context there, you learn essentially on the Kiowa in flight school. So if you pick the Kiowa after you learned on the Kiowa, it's kind of like cheating.
We still had the what was it? We still had the TH-67s and BWS, so I never actually flew the Alpha Chuck. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So we flew TH-67s and then the Alpha Chucks in BWS. So I can say that for a very short period of time, I too was a Kiowa pilot.
I think one of the things, I like that you point that out, and that's the unique aspect of the Kiowa is the connection with the ground guys. It's just like, and the ground guys love it, and I like that you picked up on that, and that was kind of your motivation to pick the mission instead of the airframe. I like that. I hope you put that sentence in your book.
Absolutely, I think I did.
I mean, that's cool. I mean, I had a following thought, but I've lost it. So move on.
That's good. So you mentioned that you were flying a pink team on that last story you were talking about. Was that your guys' preferred teaming on that deployment? And who were your Apaches? Were they also with Third ID?
Yeah, we kind of had a smattering. I remember actually we had UAE guys that we were rotating missions with as well, which was kind of odd.
UAE guys flying Apaches in Afghanistan?
Yeah.
I had what?
Yeah.
Wow, that's legitimately very surprising to me. I know they've been involved in Afghanistan, but they've always kind of chosen to have a very low profile.
Yeah.
But the fact that there were a bunch of UAE pilots out there smoking Taliban, and now they're currently supporting the Taliban government, it's mind blown.
Boom. Wow. Unless I'm having the most senior moment and I just assign that in my brain. No, I remember that because I do remember supporting them in the ALSI shop too. We had UAE pilots coming in, to get gear and all that kind of good stuff. And I'm like, oh, where are you guys from? Oh, that's interesting.
That's fascinating.
That is, yeah.
How do you team with a UAE pilot? I mean, it's just how do the rules?
I was lucky enough not to have to. Yeah, I never did. I know it was happening, and it could have been it could have been just a very small time that we even did it, but.
Because I know, I've teamed with, or not teamed with, worked in parallel to Italian attack pilots.
Yeah.
And the rules were very clear. It's hey, you don't fucking talk to them. They cannot engage. They had a completely different set of ROE. We couldn't receive a talk on from them. They couldn't receive a talk on from us. It was hey, they exist and they're over here, but we can't do anything with them.
Yeah.
That was a modern first world, European NATO ally. That's.
Yeah. I'm trying to locate the exact point where I kind of talk about that. And
I missed that in the book.
It was February. And we had begun flying joint missions with the United Arab Emirates, who also had Apache station at Kef. There it is.
Wow. Yeah. I must have just blown past that paragraph.
Yeah.
Insane.
Yeah. So I mean, it was kind of, and in fact, in this particular instance, that's why I think I talked about it, because it was supposed to be a scout weapons team unless the UAE pilots showed up. And we were basically in the security briefing, if UAE pilots show up for an Apache flight, then one of your Kiowa crews is out and they're in.
Wow.
Oh, okay.
I'm surprised when you submitted your book for DoD approval, they didn't make you take that one out. That seems like.
My friend Dee was just they didn't read it. They just kept it for
There's
6
no
months.
Way.
That was her charge the whole time. I was like, hey, it finally cleared. And I sent a screenshot all proud with my little memo. And that was the first thing she said. She was like, they didn't read it.
No. And for context there, when I guess anybody who's ever been in the military, if you write a book about your time, you are required to submit your manuscript for DoD approval for release.
Yeah. And it's a just slam your head into the table 6-month process for me, and that's also while Afghanistan was just falling apart. And I was just sitting here I'm talking about this shit for years. It's right here.
And for full disclaimer for our fans, when Luke and I finish our book, we are not going to do that.
No.
Good on you. Good on you.
We won't be giving away any details on, how to fly aircraft. So
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't even have an active security clearance when I was in Afghanistan in 2012.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that. Yeah, we probably saw shit or got exposed to stuff that we definitely weren't supposed to be seeing.
Sure.
Technically speaking.
Oh yeah.
We're not going to be I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about that. I know better than that.
Yeah.
Got some common sense.
And I was almost a little too paranoid early on when I started really writing this. So, and even in the journals and notes that I kept at the time, just to not run afoul of them, I figured I wasn't writing this entirely for the military community. My goal was to I wanted a soldier's neighbor to be able to read it. I didn't want it to just be Army acronyms and, General so-and-so and the whatever ID of people just get lost in that,
They do.
And that's, I think, part of the reason why it actually took me so long. Not only was I taking these journals and notes and trying to transpose them from, present to past tense and trying to like weave it all together into a story, but it was also to pull a lot of that jargon out and actually translate as if it was another freaking language, because, we speak Army.
Not only that, you speak aviation, which is
right.
just a whole different ball of wax.
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. It's just too, it's like a dialect of a dead language already. Yeah.
Well, and that's one thing, in reading your book, extremely easy to read from that viewpoint. Now, granted, I'm not exactly the target audience for that aspect, because I've been on the ground and I've been a pilot. So I understand. Obviously, there's nothing you could have written in there that I wouldn't have understood.
Right.
But it was extremely easy for the layman to understand. There was not a technical term in there that wasn't immediately explained. In fact, I can't even remember all that many technical terms that were even mentioned at all. I think you mentioned
I tried really hard to just say armored vehicle, because again, it didn't matter to your average reader that it was a Cougar or an MRAP or an MATV or a Striker. I think it would have muddled the point that I was trying to make in many of those cases. So
it would have confused them for sure. It's like, oh wait, I thought you were talking about Strikers.
Yeah,
why are we suddenly? Why are we talking about MATV?
Is that a tank? Yeah,
right. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I mean, so what kind of prompted you to start the book? I mean, is this something that you had ambitions for early on, or was it something you just kind of put together later down the road?
I didn't want to do it at all. So I'm not even kidding. I did not want to do this. So it all started out, I was writing journals for family when I was in the Bagram deployment. So rather than deal with, even Facebook was evil and around then. So I didn't want to be putting stuff on social media, but I didn't want to be sending out emails either. So I was like, how can I do this? So I made what was essentially a password protected blog. And that was my notes and my journals that I was just keeping like very, very small group of family and friends.
Sure.
And I was only doing that. And it was my grandmother who had been a reporter before. She had worked on Capitol Hill. She had interviewed all these people, and she started badgering me later on in that deployment. Like, the things you're seeing and the pictures you're showing and all these things you're explaining, these guys don't know. Like, the media is not saying anything about it. Nobody knows that this is happening in the manner in which you're reporting it. People know we're there, but that's about it. And so she's like, well, when you get home, have you ever thought about writing a book? I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. So like 2 years went by. I go again. I set up the same thing. So now I'm in Kandahar. I'm still saying, and it's getting worse. And I'm writing all this stuff down, and the tightening of the ROE, and I'm watching these ground guys getting lit up, and it's so frustrating because I can't do what I need to do about it. So she's still coming after me. Just, you got to do something. You got to do something. And then she finally wore me down and was like, when you get home, I'll help you. We'll put it all together. We'll create a book. So I said, okay, fine, I'll do it. I promise I'll do it. She passed away like less than a month later. So she had a stroke while I was over there. I didn't even get a Red Cross message. It was kind of like I found out in just the worst way. So my roommate, though, had heard me. And so one day he's over there and he's like, you have to write a book now, right? I was like, fuck. Yeah, I guess I do. Yeah. So I started compiling it all. And that's, literally since I got out, it's freaking 7 years that I've just, I said I'd do it. So I got all my notes. I got everything together. And I was like, well, yeah, people need to know. She's right. Sure, they need to know what's going on. So that's how it came to be.
I kind of had the same realization today as I was scheduling out some of our posts for the next week. And this is not a knock to journalists at all. I have a lot of respect for people, especially conflict journalists that risk their lives and their well-being to go and report on these things. But there are millions of pictures and stories and videos from people in all the NATO forces, America, Canada, that were on the ground, and they weren't even being deliberate journalists. They're just taking pictures as they're going around. But it's probably the most comprehensive documentation of a war ever in history. Absolutely. And it's just stuck on a whole bunch of people's old hard drives and cell phones. And it's just mind-blowing to me that, the media, like a reporter would die to have that kind of volume of information about any topic, period. Right. And most guys, it's just sitting on their old 2012 laptop, and they never even bother to bring it back up. And it's incredible that there are people like yourself that are taking the steps like, hey, I want to take this information and arrange it in such a way that it's going to have a meaningful representation of my experience going forward.
Yeah, and it was challenging too, because I have what I know and what the pictures I have, but reaching out to others, trying to get maybe some of their stories or some of their pictures, it was extremely limited, not really from their unwillingness to help, but just like you said, they're like, oh, dude, that hard drive crashed like 3 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
Or
you
that's on my
lost
old camera. I lost
everything.
that.
Yeah. Just like, wait, like everything you had's gone. Yeah. Just a couple of years ago, I just shit the bed. Like,
so what's going to happen in like 10 years? Everybody's going to like have upload their stuff online, and then Google's just going to start leaking war crimes.
Yeah.
Well, and that's another thing too. I mean,
on the American soldiers' behalf, I should say.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's how many pictures have people taken that after things like, oh man, that's probably not something I should have taken a picture of, and then they're scared to keep it, and they just discard the whole hard drive or they delete it. It's like, hey man, like that's history. Now, obviously, unless you're like actually documenting a war crime, okay, that's one thing. But if it's just a picture of a dead body, what's the story behind that guy? How did that situation come to be? Just because it's a picture of something morbid doesn't mean it's not something worth retaining and considering. As long as it's not like something that like you're putting in your closet and like tying a noose around your neck and doing your thing to, like like it doesn't need to be weird, but this is that there's a story behind that picture.
And that's why, I talked about when Bagram got attacked in 2010 and the Apaches just waylaid these dudes, but they were wearing our uniforms. They were coming in across the wire but we were, I'm the one doing the battle damage assessment from this, so we're going out there early in the morning. There's just dead dudes everywhere, wearing ACUs, have RPGs and all kinds of crazy shit. But I was like, I can't take pictures of this on my own stuff because I'm afraid of the ramifications of that. But now that you say that, you see like footage from Vietnam and Korea and World War II and anything before, dead dudes laying around everywhere.
Yeah,
but they had obviously successfully scared me into not doing it. So
Oh, they tried the same thing with us too, with like the GoPros.
GoPros.
Because the first half of our deployment, everybody was wearing a GoPro. And honestly, the best way to make sure you didn't get into a firefight was to wear a GoPro. Because if that thing was recording, like just nothing happening.
No action here.
No action here. But then a couple Marines pee on a dead body in Helmand, and now suddenly it's a big deal. Which obviously that is a big deal.
Right.
But I don't know. I never understood that, and I honestly never paid attention to it. And I made up for it on my second deployment. And I made sure that every time I flew, I had a DSLR with me, or I had some sort of pocket camera. I mean, I wore a GoPro. Like, man, I made up for my failures on my first deployment on the second one.
I mean, honestly, man, like it's cool that you had the wherewithal to, and being a little bit older and things like that helps, or not being just completely burnt out like I was. By the time we went to Afghanistan, I was like, fuck this, fuck everything, fuck it all. I don't care. I just want to get out and be done. But that's one of my biggest regrets, is just not documenting more closely. Even just carrying like an iPhone on deployment and snapping pictures.
I would be totally lying if I was jaded. I was. I mean, it was just that I didn't like the direction we were going. And so, I mean, but I don't believe I was unique in that at all. I mean, I was not drinking that Army Kool-Aid anymore, but not many people in our troop were, so it was more of that classic, you guys are out there, we just got to support you. Like we're pissed at what's happening with us, but I'm not going to let that detract me from what's going on. If I'm out here, I'm supporting those ground guys, and I'll be pissed off later. I got something to do right now.
Sure.
And so we just loved our ground guys so much that's like the only thing that did keep us from a freaking noose in the closet. Cause it was just, I have a job to do. I have to go help these dudes.
Right.
Yeah, man. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that's, and kind of, circle back around to the Kiowas, like that's just a connection that the ground guys and the Kiowas have. It's just there. And even like we love Apaches too, but because you can look up and see that dude's face. Yeah. That right there just makes all the world of difference. And, it has to leave like lasting impressions. And I could imagine go out and you're flying around, and you look down, you see some kid's face,
Yeah.
after a really thick and bushy firefight.
Yeah.
Then you go back. I could see why, like, you're chomping at the bit to get back out there.
Oh yeah. It was so emotionally engaging, because when we would go low on fuel, which was often, it's just when shit goes down, it can last a while, and then a lot of times bad guys are like, we'll just wait.
Yeah.
We'll outlast them. so and sure enough, we got to go back to Passab. We got to get gas. We'll be right back, and sure enough, you're monitoring the freak. And right when you leave, son of a bitch, and trying to do like a NASCAR, turn, like a pit crew. Come on, we got to go, so.
And we had to get good at just playing that game, and it probably took us a couple months to figure it out. I was like, hey, if we get it, lose coverage at some point, we need to make sure that when we lose coverage, we're in a building or we're behind cover or something like that. And then while you guys are gone, we just stay.
10 minutes, man.
Don't just
10 minutes.
All I do is
it was like clockwork.
Yep.
It's like as soon as the sound of those birds was out of there, 10 minutes to the dot, they'd be out there shooting again. It was remarkable how quick they
and that's why we, in a lot of cases, if it wasn't going quick enough for us in that part, I mean, we would, like, the left seat would jump out and they'd be helping. I'd be running over there loading freaking rockets or 50. Mm-hmm. I wasn't gassing because I wasn't good at it. But they had, they had that down.
Sure,
But basically, if you're talking about doing armament, give me that rocket. Let's go. We got to go.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I imagine your fuel and FARP terms are pretty quick in the Kiowa, unless you have to load the 50, right?
They were still pretty quick. I mean, because there's about 100 rounds in those 50 cal cans. I mean, they're just running out there. They're just linking those belts, and it was quick. It could be real quick. The whole thing with the Kiowa, I was actually talking to a really good buddy who had been an Apache pilot with me on the first run, and he was actually talking about how the Army, because he's still in, and he was like, the Army's missing out on such a rapidly deployable asset, because he just recalled, he was like, when you guys would have a tick, you were just in the fucking air so fast. And that's it, because we just had the ability to be. It just, you could start the thing, you could be in it, strapping in and in the air. I mean, minutes. It was really like that. Yeah. It didn't take as long to start up, and I think it's maybe because it had super old technology and just didn't have much to do. But you could get bogged down in the setup, and that was kind of one of the things we also had to get out of the training mindset and like, what is important to do right now. And it was,
what can we do in route?
Yeah. There's something going on. You just need a grid, a freak, and a call sign. Just get me there. That's all I need. I will set everything else up from there, but we just got to get there, and we can do it all the rest in route.
Well, that's another really important aspect about Army aviation that I think is really unique is, if it's an Air Force asset, man, it's a full 9 line. It is very documented. It's like you have to give me all 5 pieces of information for me to even come to the objective. But talking to Army pilots is very different.
I don't need that.
Yeah. We do have a checklist for those things for certain scenarios, like if you're striking a deliberate target and there's not troops under fire, stuff like that. Right. But people are getting shot at. I think a lot of younger RTOs or junior FOs don't know that all they have to do is just, hey man, we're being fucked up from the north.
Right.
Hey man,
plain English. That damn J-fire. I mean, so and it was a lot harder, with the French, because you had the language barrier, and then they would try and use some of that stuff. And I think we finally had that heart to heart eventually, where it was just like, tell me where you are, tell me where he is, give me the basics, plain English. I tried really hard to just, whether I was talking to a Frenchman or any other foreign forces or even the US, I found it, when you started trying to just use so much tactical jargon and trying to make it proper, it was unnecessary. We didn't have time. We have to just get things going.
Yeah, and that was one of the reasons why we love the Kiowa so much, because it wasn't calling in a JDAM, it wasn't even calling in a Hellfire. It was It was a, hey, where the blue smoke is, hey dude, shoot the 203 with the blue smoke into the tree line. It's over there, and then the 50s could come in, or rockets or whatever, and do some work.
Right.
So we felt that rapidity on the ground too. Like, the Kiowas could act as quickly as we could in terms of suppressing the enemy or destroying an enemy fighting position or whatever. So
yeah,
and a lot of times you could see them and we couldn't.
yeah,
I can count on my fingers the number of time I saw an enemy fighter shooting at me on that deployment on one hand. Like they were like freaking ghosts. But to you could fly. I mean, you have an aerial perspective. You can see beyond cover that we can't see. You can see down canals that we don't have visibility on. I mean, I know you saw tons of enemy.
I was a huge fan of our alternate assets, I guess you could say. I mean, we had the big ball on top. You can use that sight. I mean, it's old. It has a lot of limitations. It could be effective, especially in thermal or at night or something like that. But
it sucks.
I mean, just straight up, but just straight up, like I need to look at something right now. A digital camera or binoculars, and the whole digital camera thing, it just wasn't taught. That was another frustration point. I wish that aerial photography, instead of like, okay, we have another sexual harassment PowerPoint to go through. Here goes half our day on, just PowerPoint of dumb shit. Why can't we learn to use these freaking cameras? And why can't we talk about, not only can you use this digital camera, take a picture, you can zoom in real quick and you got a snapshot in time. You know exactly what that dude's holding. It only takes him a second or two to put it away. But if you got it on that camera, you have evidence right now, and you got a second to really go, okay, holy shit, yep, he's got the gray hat on, he's at the tan vet, because you couldn't see that with the MMS, with that mass mounted sight. It didn't have colors. So it's like, and that's where we had gotten with those rules of engagement. They want to know freaking everything. You got to brief it all. So as much information as you could gather. So I was one of the very few that really, really loved the binoculars, but it made a lot of people sick. I don't know why. I didn't really get airsick from it, but especially the image stabilize, because the aircraft's juking around and it kind of just gets this weird ocean feel to it. And it was just enough for some people to be like, absolutely not. I can't. I just can't.
I'd be with that. There's no way.
I don't know. It did not bother me, but there was a solid group that was like, that's just not for me. I can't do those things.
It's funny you mentioned the digital camera. Because that's something that I ended up doing in 2017 because of talking to Kiowa pilots from our deployment. And it came into play a bunch of times. We're trying to develop target packages in Farah, and they're like, hey, we want to bomb, we think there's an enemy fighting position in the mountains. I was like, well, here's pictures of it. Here's rocks lined up. It's not thermal image from our TADs, which is way better than MMS, but still it's thermal. It's just, you don't get a lot out of it. But when I showed them a digital picture of it, they're like, holy shit, that's a fighting position. I was like, that's what I told you. Can you please blow it up now?
I know. That was I wish more time, hindsight, but I just wish more time and effort would have been trained. Because yes, we would do photo reconnaissance and it was okay. Here's some strategies, but it wasn't as super formal in my mind, in my recollection, as it could have been. You really could have taken a junior aviator out there and just been like, this is how to do it. This is what we found works. But instead it was kind of this whole hit or miss thing.
That kind of speaks to the original purpose of the Kiowa too, right? I mean, that was actually, you mentioned earlier about how people didn't know what the Kiowa was, but I have a very distinct memory in my head as a kid watching like the History Channel or something, and they have like the Kiowa has the ability to scout out weapons. There's this little rise, and here comes the ball, taking a little peek and then dropping back down again. Yeah. And so that's what I thought the Kiowa was until I got to Afghanistan, and it was fucking shit up. I was like, this thing's amazing.
Well, that's what it was supposed to be.
Yeah,
exactly. that was the whole idea. When they brought out the Apache in the 70s, it was like, this is going to be a compliment to the Kiowa. Kiowa's going to find him. The Apache's going to kill him. The pink teams had happened in Vietnam, but they were thinking more doctrinally, like a team of Kiowas is going to find something, and a team of Apaches is going to blow something up.
Yeah.
But then just out of necessity, there's like, well, if they're already there, why not put guns on them? Just turn it into a light gun trip. Which ironically is probably what led to its demise. they put the guns and stuff on it. It acted like a light attack aircraft. And then when the Army was trying to get rid of something, and they're like, well, all they are is just a light attack aircraft. We got Apaches. What do we need those for?
Well, we can spend a few $1 billion more and develop some other crazy shit that we never actually bought.
Exactly.
Comanche.
Yeah, Comanche. And then the AR-8. I mean, it was actually, I don't even know what iteration of trying to replace the Kiowa we're in, but it's, I mean, you talk about
a promising one now.
Yeah.
The future vertical lift and ARAP or whatever it is now. I think we're basically going to get a version of the Comanche back.
Right.
Really.
And it looks really good. I think it's going to work out because they've kind of changed. They're under budget and ahead of schedule for government acquisition.
Well, that's a plus.
I know, right?
What?
I didn't even. When you said that, I was just like, "Oh, he's being funny."
No, I'm
being
under
serious.
budget and dead serious, under budget and ahead of schedule. And basically, what they did is they basically just made the private sector develop it. They stopped because I mean, in the past, like Comanche's a great example. They're like, the Army just keeps changing the requirements and adding new shit to it, and like, oh well, what if it can do this or what if it can do that? And this time they're like, hey, build something for us, and we're gonna tell you whether we like it or not. And it's working out right now. Who knows? I'm sure somebody will find a way to screw it
Somebody will fuck it up. Some general will fuck it up. I mean, have you ever seen the Pentagon Wars?
I was just thinking of that. I literally was just thinking that when you said that. I was like, that sounds like the Bradley fighting vehicle.
Yeah, that scene when they go through all the different iterations, and the general's like, "Well, why can't I just blow up a tank?" Yeah.
You just see these epic just scenes of this thing and this beautiful battle.
Well, that's what happened to the newer, like they were about to replace the Kiowa. And it was on track, and they just like, well, we need it to be able to fly 30 minutes, about 14,500 feet, and it needs to be able to be double engine. And they just kept adding the stuff, and like all the companies like, we can't make that, man. Like
Star Wars,
it doesn't freaking exist.
Yeah.
And eventually they like, well, we'll just get rid of the Kiowa. I was like, what? How's that plan B?
and that was the most ironic thing to me when we learned that, because I was like, well, surely if we're trying to save money, we've got to be the cheapest one to operate. I mean, we've got an incredible operational readiness rate. This thing is not hard to keep in the air. Yeah. I mean, 50 caliber ammunition as compared to the Apache shells and everything else probably isn't that. Yeah, like I was thinking through it. I was like, even our gas burn, like, there's no way that this is your cost savings measure.
It was never about cost savings. It was about icing. I'm convinced it was about icing Bell out. That's my conspiracy theory. I think they just didn't. I think that Bell had way too much influence on the whole process, and they're having trouble like exerting control over Bell and their logistics chain, and they just wanted to ice them out. That's my conspiracy theory.
I haven't heard that one, but sure. All right.
Ryan's like, yeah, you're a fucking crazy guy.
No, because they didn't just get rid of the Kiowa; they got rid of the TH-67 too.
Yeah,
no, really.
It was the whole thing. Bell does not currently have an aircraft flying with the United States Army.
Interesting. What senator had some pull over at Lockheed
I
Martin?
I thought it had. Well, we were lied to and told it was just because it's single engine. Then that was their line. But it was a reliable engine, I will say.
Yeah, and you know what?
Good engine.
Yeah, you get. I mean, you teach people how to do an auto rotation. That's just it's one of the safest things. Like, I mean, obviously, a single engine aircraft has a degree of terrifying fear to it. You're like, if an engine fails, I'm at 50 feet right now. I'm dead. I die. But guess what? If you're flying in Afghanistan at 7,000 feet above sea level and you lose an engine, you're going to have the same exact result. Whether you're in a dual engine or single engine aircraft, it's the same.
That's one of the craziest auto rotations for people who don't know what that is. It's basically just a simulation of your engine not working anymore, and you just start falling out of the sky. And but I did it under MVGs at night, and that was a trip. That was pretty awesome. I mean, luckily it was just training. We're near the airfield, but it was kind of like, hey, you want to do an auto rotation under night vision goggles? I was like, Jesus, okay, here we go. And it was, I mean, you have no depth perception really under night vision goggles. So it's kind of just added like, oh, okay, little varsity level maneuver here. Let's go.
Well, I mean, in the Apache, we do it under nods. or not, it's under the NVS, which has even less depth perception. It's
basically
playing a video game.
Yeah.
Talk about terrifying. Jeez. But they don't even teach auto rotations like to the ground anymore because the Army has that rule. It says that dual engine aircraft will not do an auto to the ground.
Oh wow.
So everyone that's learning on the Lakota now in flight school, no autos to the ground. They don't know how to do it.
Ooh.
Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy. I did not know that.
Power on recoveries only.
Wow. How about that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I believe it was just an extreme loss to lose that asset. Not just because I flew it, but just how many talks I've had with ground guys and just with hearing your stories and just some of the guys have shaken my hand that have been out there. There's just this man moment, you're just like, wow, I'm so happy I supported you. And they're just so happy I supported them. I think like that link was lost just by getting rid of that airframe and not replacing it with anything solid. I mean, you have the Apache running the scout mission and they're doing it in concert with UAVs, which sounded good on paper. It's like, oh, well, the UAV can see really well and the Apache's got bigger guns and like this should work. But I just, I don't think that the infantry and people who had the combat experience like y'all have were even asked along, well, what do you guys think? Well, why would you say that this is a bad idea? Like you didn't have a warrant officer in the room when that happened. It's like, well, let me tell you why this is dumb,
No, I mean, in like many Army decisions, I think it was a decision that was made for some other priority other than obviously how well we can wage a war or what platforms are effective. It was just it was a dark moment for the Army indeed.
Yeah.
Ben Strong has a question in the chat. He said, "Did you ever shoot rockets in the 58 Delta under NVGs?"
Oh yes, absolutely. And it's cool. they glow a lot. Yeah, no, NVG rocket shooting. Our weapon system didn't articulate like the Apache, so we didn't have. They were hard mounted, and so that was in itself kind of difficult. My dog is like losing her mind. Go lay down.
Okay.
Jesus. So it was it could be difficult enough to make a shot with our weapon systems. Some people used a grease pencil. You get in, you go ahead and do your, you go out, just check your weapon system. Every single mission, you go out. Okay, does the gun work? Does the rocket pod work? You're going to shoot every single time just to do a test fire. And you would actually, if you were so inclined, you could take a grease pencil and put a little cross or a little circle or whatever where they were landing for you that day in that aircraft, where your ass was and where you sat. So, but you couldn't really do that under NVGs. You wouldn't see that grease pencil mark. I never really took very well to the grease pencil because I wasn't originally trained with it. Like our first troop really never used it. So it's kind of like one of those things that came in later, like, oh, you should use a grease pencil. But for that reason, with NVGs too, it's like, well, that's only going to be good in some cases. And I've just never really used it. So I don't know. I never really went that far to try and implement it.
Mm. So how does one go about shooting rockets in NVGs, or just shooting a Kiowa at night anyways?
It's, I think I basically have said where it's like using the Force. You just know you get in that bird, you've shot it that day.
Yeah.
So okay, roughly on the windscreen, this is where I saw the impacts.
Yeah.
And you get good enough at shooting eventually, it's going to be in this general area. And on that day in this aircraft with me, it was hitting, right here.
Yeah.
And so and we had some people, I mean, they were just rocket Jedis. Like, I don't know how they shot some of the shots they did, impressive.
Because, I mean, at some point, like, rockets will do whatever rockets do. Like, it amazes me that people can like, oh yeah, I can hit a moving truck, with a grease pencil. Like, oh, I don't know how you do that, because I've seen the rockets that be like, yeah, man, and then just go off like 90 degrees and do its own thing. I'm like, I guess a fin broke off. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I tell you, the real shame is that they divested the Kiowa before the APKWS came out, which was the guided rockets.
I recently heard someone was talking about those, and I was like, "You have what now?" I didn't really keep up with that, buddy, like, yeah, bro, you should see these. I'm like, oh, yeah, like, way to be late with awesome munitions. Yeah.
Game changer.
Yeah.
The only thing that would have hurt the Kiowa employing APKWS is they do this weird thing. And sorry, I'm going to bore Luke, but I don't really care. So when they come out the aircraft, like normal rockets, they have a pretty straight trajectory, and Hellfires have their climb and then dive.
Right.
Well, these go like they dive first, and then they flatten out, and they have a really flat trajectory into the target. So if you're already at a low altitude, it's not very good because it's just going to plow into a tree or a farm or something.
Right. It's just another diving fire, and that's the majority of
diving fire with it.
I mean, that was really our thing. It's going to be a diving fire engagement. We're diving in, and we always had to be careful with that too, because you're going in and you're shooting and you're doing whatever, and you got to kind of be cognizant of that altitude and that airspeed and all of that. But it was difficult with them being just hard mounted, until you really got the hang of it, of where those rounds were going to go.
And Shane Blanton said, "Stop talking about his rocket shots." I'm assuming that's somebody he flew with.
He's a good dude. I like Shane. You're good at rocket shots, Shane. Yeah, he was in my walk class as well as originally in Bravo Troop with me, and yeah, he's a good dude.
Nice.
So as we're approaching the end, and you've gone through this entire process, you have written a book, it is out. Where can your book be found? Where can it be purchased? In addition to obviously the special deal that we do have ongoing, where if you go to your personal website. But if somebody does want a hard copy, or they don't really care about getting all the goodies, where can they get your book?
Yeah, so if you actually go to www.scoutsoutbook.com, I have links now on there that basically have it right there, front and center, like right on the homepage. There is a special button that says, here's where you're going to go for a signed hardcover book that you can enter this coupon and you're going to get the goods. If you want it, right now, Amazon style, absolutely. Amazon's there. If you're, a Kindle reader, you can have it in the next 5 minutes. Same with Apple Books. It's on there as well. I know I have it on Barnes & Noble. Interestingly enough, I Googled it out of random boredom the other day, and it's at Target. Didn't know that. So that's cool. I just found that out. So it's kind of cropping up everywhere. But I would say the main things would be, Amazon, Apple Books, Barnes & Noble. So that's what I'm tracking.
And what would you say was the most? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Luke.
I said digging the Hemingway quote at the bottom there.
It's spoiler alert. It's on the bookmarks that I give away as well with the book. That's actually there's a bit of a theme of that, as you can imagine, going through the book, since that was kind of our thing. We were
yeah, nice.
Now, what would you say was the greatest challenge you had in terms of the writing process, other than waiting for the DoD to approve it for 6 months?
It's a lonely process, and I would also say that because it's not a war that's front and center in the psyche of everybody, you're in something like this. It was constantly going back and forth between being in Afghanistan in my mind and reliving an event and writing it and trying to be in that moment and get it all down, and all of a sudden it's just like, honey, can you take out the trash? Like, it's, so it's just like different, that was actually one of the challenges I hadn't anticipated of, you have your normal everyday civilian post-army life, but then you're having to snap your mind back and forth between deployment and home and deployment and home. And that, I think that was probably one of my larger challenges, aside from really having no real mentorship or help. I had buddies from my troops, they would answer questions, they would help me. My friend, total shout out, Dee Dee Murawski, she was awesome. She's kind of mentioned in the book. She's got a journal entry in there. J. Amarillo. There's a bunch of people who helped. But it was a smaller circle. Nick Payne, Eric Newhouse, Pete Higgs. All these guys were there to help, but I had to have the question to pose to them. Otherwise, they're just going about their lives. And so, and that was kind of it's a very isolated feeling where you're just kind of, okay, I'm deployed again. Everybody else is home. I'm deployed in my mind again. And then boom, okay, here we go. So
I know Eric Newhouse. He switched over to Apaches. I flew with him.
Yeah, he's a good dude.
He's a good dude.
I mean, the big secret behind writing a book is people don't want to. People who haven't ever tried it, it's fucking hard too. It's hard work.
Difficult.
It's a lot of work.
Difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, I figured it was going to be difficult, but just throw in a couple of extra levels there. I mean, there's so much that goes into it, and there's a lot of disinformation out there.
Yeah.
I mean, you're absolutely you're throwing yourself into a really big unknown. Even though so many people write books and so many books are published daily, there's so many pitfalls to just make you do it wrong. So that's really, and furthermore, the interest was only there for a split second. Again, in Afghanistan, it's gone. So, are you going to try and go for a big publisher? Because right now, if you're not writing about the issues of the day, you're not really going to be in that airport gift shop. You're not going to be,
Sure.
So it's just that it's a big battle on that front.
Mm-hmm.
And if you could, to the prospective readers of your book, or those who have read it, or those who will read it, what's the main message you want to make sure you get across throughout, the publication of your book? What would be if you could summarize it in one sentence?
I would say I want the story told. That was my promise. I want the accurate account to be there. Whether people agree with my perspective or whether people agree with the war itself or not, this is as accurate an account as I could make what I saw and what we did.
Nice. Yeah. Appreciate the ethos behind that, because that's something that we're trying to do here as well. So yeah, man, that's cool. Well, I mean, I'm going to have to get around to reading it eventually, but my reading wormholes end up pulling me so many different directions. And it's like, I've got this book on my shelf, and then it's like a year later and I still haven't read it. So
yeah, it's all good. I mean, like I told my wife, I'm like, everybody's busy, I get it. I'm not messed up if someone's like, man, I'll read it when I can. Like, I get it. Yeah. And then for the people, some of the people who read it, like advance and I sent them like a free copy. I'm like, hey, can you write a review? They're like, oh, I'm so busy. And I just joked with my wife the other day. I was like, everybody's got toilet time. Like, they could write a review.
I'll tell you what, man, I'll read it and I'll write it a review for the official review of the Panjwai Podcast.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. Curtis wrote a baller review. I love Curtis's review. Yeah, you were the first one on Amazon, and I was like, dude, wow, thank you. Yeah.
Man, that'll be 0.05% of all future sales. Kidding.
Yeah.
Well, Ryan, the way we always close these episodes out is we kind of give you, and we kind of already had, so if you don't have anything to add, that's cool too. But we kind of give you a chance to say your piece, anything you want to put out there, any final words, any shout outs, any kind of thing like that.
Yeah, just everybody I mentioned that's in my acknowledgments that did help. Just you ground guys out there, doing what you were doing, even with where your thoughts may have been on the subject, you were still out there doing it. And it was absolutely an honor to support you from the air. I mean, that was just what it was all about.
Cool. Well, we really appreciate you coming on, man. It's been a good chat for sure.
Thanks a lot. It's been fun.
Awesome. And I will leave this live up for about 10 minutes with this up here so that anybody that pops out can see it and hop on. But to everyone who's listening right now, myself, Luke, and Ryan are signing off. Thank you for listening to the Panjwai Podcast.